Hi, this is Bill Durant from Xveris at xveris.com, and you're listening to EA Interviews.
EA Interviews, episode 281.
Inspiration, transformation, success stories, and the Imperfect Action Round. 7 days a week. Join Mario Ficini for today's Expert Authority Effect interview.
Have you ever wanted to increase sales? How about grow your company? I know I sure as heck have, and that is why I'm super excited to have Bill Durant, president of Xveris Media, here today. And he is so impressive. All the companies he's worked with, he is the new best-selling author of Digital Stone Age, How the World's Most Successful Advertisers Use Traditional Thinking and Innovation to Drive Growth. Now, if you've ever thought about doing something on YouTube, you probably want to learn from someone who's won YouTube Ad of the Year award. He's also a Harvard alumnus, and I am excited, and I'm going to cheat a little bit here because he's done so many cool things. He's worked with Coke, Masterclass, Bananos, Knicks, and I know I saw Nike on there too. I can't wait to have him up, so I'm just going to jump right in, thank our sponsor, and we'll be back with Bill Durant. Every business needs a book, including yours. Visit freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Once again, that's freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Bill Durant. Bill, how are you feeling today?
Feeling great. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, and I'm excited to just jump right into. You have such an impressive resume, and I know you've helped thousands of people, and just I want to know more about what does it take to get to that level, and what should someone that owns a business right now, if they're thinking about doing ads, what's the first thing you could say they should really focus on? Because I'm sure we could go for 8 hours on here's all the steps, but what's the starting point?
You know, the starting point to a successful advertising strategy that grows a brand is actually to take a step back and have a better foundation. So If you have a stronger foundation, you're delivering a superior customer experience, and you're actually putting out, a true standard of why your business exists and what differentiates you. And that's something that you can articulate. Then driving people to your business is going to be that much more impactful. So I always say start with the foundation, which often has nothing to do with paid advertising. And from there, use paid advertising like a megaphone.
Do you have any steps as to how to establish that foundation?
Yeah, well, I do think that there's a few elements of it. Some of them are more technical than others, like ensuring that you've got your digital space or your physical space in order and, really set up to thrive and to do business, to take orders if you're a business that does that online, to collect leads if you're a business that runs off of leads, making sure that you've got your house in order technically and in a very rational way first is very important. But then I'll go back to that question of why. What is your business's why? And if you can articulate that to consumers and do that very succinctly, you're ultimately going to have a much greater conversion rate, and everything that you do from a marketing standpoint will be significantly more effective. So I think if you're starting off from the technical standpoint and making sure that users can actually find you, can actually do the things that you want them to do and to learn the things that you want them to learn, to understand why it is that you exist, and make sure that they've got the opportunity to do that in a very succinct way where they're not having to work hard to understand what you do and why you do it, then that is like steps 1 and 2 right there. And you don't even have to worry about, hiring a fancy this or that, in terms of advertising, to make sure that everything that you do from that point forward is going to be significantly more effective.
Now, when you're working with all these name brand companies, big name companies, well-known companies, whatever you want to call them, impressive companies, have you found that most of them struggle with this step, or do they have it dialed in that you don't really need to touch it, or does it really depend on the company?
It does depend on the company, but typically we work with companies at Xveris, which is my agency. We work with companies that are even if it's a Coca-Cola or a Walmart or a Post or a big organization, they've got startup brands, they've got younger brands within their portfolios, and that's who we tend to partner with. So typically what we found is that those are the brands that aren't as well established, and they're not going to run like a, perfectly well-oiled machine like the Coca-Cola brand or the Sprite brand or the big brands that we're all familiar with will. And I think for me, that's the most exciting and fulfilling part of it, is that you get to leverage what's worked in building these big brands, but what's also working in building modern brands, what's working in building startup brands and brands that from the very start have participated in the new economy, versus brands that have been around for 100 years. And I think it's an exciting challenge. And it's great when you have the opportunity to learn from others and build off of that, but to do that in a new way.
So I was having this conversation last week with a couple author clients of mine, and it's interesting how you sell books nowadays because it's, majority online, with the keywords and everything versus the traditional way where you can do a PR tour and all these other things. And I think you should do both. That's just my professional publishing opinion. But I want to ask you about some of the companies, because you mentioned the traditional brands that have been around 100 years. What are the advantages and disadvantages of these startup brands where you can do new things with them that may have not really worked for the other companies just because of the time where they were living in?
Yeah, it is an exciting time, and watching how, and this is the most important part, how are consumers, how are the people that are buying from brands or buying from us, how are they shifting and evolving their behaviors? And there's a lot of exciting things happening, but then there's also a very big element of stasis. And a lot of the things that we used to do, we still do. Doesn't matter that COVID happened, although that accelerated a lot of change. And, from our standpoint, the most important thing is that a brand, has the foundation of what's worked for them and understands rather what has worked for them and done the research behind that, but then has the risk tolerance to try new things and to try new opportunities. Because what we've found is that the science is very, very, very clear. And this is when you kind of ladder it up to the biggest brand level, folks that are in the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. And of course, beyond that point, is that you need to combine what's worked in the past, what's kind of traditional, so to speak, with new era tactics, which typically fall into the bucket of digital. And in combining those two ideas and not saying it's one versus the other, that's where people find the most success. And that's where startups and direct-to-consumer brands are finding the most success now. We've all heard of Casper and Chewy and all of these different online platforms that were direct-to-consumer brands. And they all grew based off of digital marketing channels, a lot of quote unquote new things, at least new to the last 10 or 15 years. But what they really needed to do was they could only get to a certain point from doing that. They needed to do was combine that with tactics that we consider to be traditional. Some folks even consider to be old fashioned, which is, television, regular old linear television, outdoor media, radio. You're still talking about the fastest way to accumulate reach in television, the most impactful way to reach someone in the context of their daily life with outdoor, and the highest reach of any media channel, which is radio, at least pre and post COVID. And, it's funny to watch new startup brands learn what they need to borrow from the past. And it's, of course, equally as interesting and enjoyable to watch brands that have been around for a long time learn what they need to borrow from kind of what's happening now in the future, and ultimately finding the most success by not being rigid against one set of channels or strategies versus the other.
That's a huge expert authority insight, being flexible with what you're doing, because like you're saying, the older brands, they may have never done keyword optimization on multiple platforms because they didn't need to. You go on TV, you say something, everyone's buying it, especially in the early days. Conversely, if you've never done anything on TV, I want to ask you, if someone's only doing social, email, digital, they're going up the ladder here on the digital side, keyword optimization on Google, stuff on Amazon for keyword research. And then you have this side with the radio, you have the TV, you have the publicity and all that. And I'll put publicity in the center because that's getting really blurred lately. But TV, radio, and any traditional means, how far do you think a company can grow? What are the biggest companies that are only digital, and where are they getting for a market cap versus the larger companies or the old traditional advertising?
It's a great question. And, there are people that I think in our industry in advertising, there's this huge push towards everything digital. Mm-hmm. And, if you want to talk about traditional marketing channels or media channels, you're old fashioned and that's not going to catch headlines. And there's a lot of people that have kind of positioned themselves as contrarians in the market and said, is that really true? Is that really what works the best? And, what they found is, a lot of them have kind of asked this question now for the last 5 or 10 years of what truly great brand has been built without ever doing any traditional marketing, exclusively online. And I think for a long time, we really struggled to even have kind of stabs at brands that may have done that, and to even have guesses at brands that may have done that, because they just didn't exist. And so, those brands were inherently limited in terms of their ability to grow because they were never leveraging, traditional channels that gave scale, that gave reach. And I think there's a few reasons for that. Number one, it helps a lot to have the impact and the scale of a radio or the impact and scale of television. But it also builds trust. When a brand is on television, we implicitly trust that brand more than a brand that we've never seen on TV. So you can talk about TiVo and DVRs and no one's watching commercials, but at the end of the day, when you run that kind of marketing mix analysis, TV still works for most brands in most scenarios, not all the time, of course. And I think that's really shocking to people. And what they didn't realize was how much they were limiting themselves by not participating with television. The good news is that for any of those channels, and this learning we found is pretty universal. So if you're growing a small business all the way up to a huge brand, this learning is universal of I'm utilizing digital channels. We have a number of brands that only use digital. And part of the reason why is that that's just where their budgets are at. They can't afford big, massive, campaigns. So we found is that those brands will grow utilizing those digital channels, and they'll benefit from bringing in something from kind of the real world or a traditional channel or something more tactile and tangible to their business. So for a big brand, that could mean something like outdoor or radio. But for a smaller brand, that might mean something like trade shows or other types of in-person events. Like you said, publicity is really straddling the line. Publicity is a good thing no matter who you are or where you are. That's for sure. And that's what's really exciting is that this kind of essentially universal learning of if I can implement the best of what's working for me digitally and then augment that with other things that really reach people in the real world and continue to help me build trust and exposure, that's how I know I'm going to be most successful. And once you hit that insight, the kind of dogmatic, rigid approach to marketing goes away and your results and your ability to grow increase substantially.
Well, I appreciate you for sharing that. I know you want to take a quick second, but I wanted to ask you about let's talk about the press releases, because when we were talking about the publicity getting the gray area, I think, again, you start down here with, and it's not to say they're any less, it's just on this side, you have SEO and digital stuff, and then there's a mixing point, and I'd say that's the press releases, because the press release essentially goes out digitally, but it gets picked up traditionally, and that can be like the accelerant juice. So we're obviously saying that both sides are good, but would you say that you should start on one or the other, depending on where your business is. And there's a timing component to this. As it, if you're digital only, at some point it sounds like you should entertain traditional once you have that risk tolerance and budget, frankly, to be doing it.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And traditional may mean, like I said, traditional may mean participating in an in-person trade show, assuming, those will happen again, hopefully soon. It may mean participating in something, that's, if you're a local business, something that's local to your community, a local community event. It's not just making sure that you've got your digital house in order. What I will say is that starting by having your digital house in order is imperative for almost every business. There's always going to be a few businesses that are kind of more geographically based, located in the physical world, and aren't really as serviced by digital marketing channels, but they're very few and far between. They are the exception, not the rule. And so
do any come to mind for you for expert authority world? Like, do you even have a handful of those types? Because I know they're out there.
They're out there. It's more of like, what is something that is an add-on to another experience that I'm not pre-planning, that I'm not searching for, something that becomes kind of part of another experience. So, let's use like the simplest, most basic, terrible way of explaining this, which is I'm at Disney World and it rains at Disney World all the time. I'm planning my whole trip to Disney World, everything about it, but I'm not planning on buying a poncho. Eventually, I'm going to see those storm clouds, and if I'm about to enter the park, I'm going to buy a poncho from the nearest CVS or the nearest person who's selling that. Yeah,
or at the park, they're on sale for $100.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm looking at something that's not really a pre-planned exercise, that I'm not, looking up even while I'm on the way, while I've got that need. And so those needs are very few and far between now. For the most part, we're doing our research, and at the very least, we're searching for something that we need, even if it wasn't a planned need, and putting that into Google. So if you don't have your digital house in order first as your foundation, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get business. And if you've got that in order, that's when it's much easier for you to move on and start doing things like you said, like publicity. Because now when people learn about what you've got going on, what your news is, they've got somewhere to go and there's something they can do about it. And that is so critical and key, is that the journey just doesn't end right there. And then hopefully they run into you at some other point in the future. The journey can actually start from there when you've got your digital house in order.
How many people, it's fine, people are good. How many people do you think when they're looking for something, they immediately do a search for it versus call someone or text someone or?
Oh, these days it's, here's what I will say. The vast majority of people are doing a search for it. The most powerful touch point, however, is when they are having that interpersonal conversation with someone and get that recommendation or that idea or that lead. That is far and away the most powerful way. So,
whether it's on the phone or a text, they're probably going to say, I'll shoot you the info. I'll just text it to you. Right.
Exactly. And think about how many times that's happened to you. And that 7 times out of 10, you just went straight to whatever product was recommended. And the other, 2 to 3 times, you at least very carefully considered it, which is all most businesses can ask for. And that's the foundation of word of mouth marketing. And, really the best way to generate word of mouth marketing isn't to kind of pursue people who can help you there. It's to have a great product experience in the first place. If you've got, again, that foundation or a great product experience, and you make it easy for people to find you, find what you do and why you do it, everything else that you do cascades from there, substantially more success.
You're sharing so much good information here. I so appreciate it. And it's just strengthening the case about the digital, because I've had that debate with people. They're like, Well, I don't really search stuff out. I just ask for recommendations. I'm like, what's step 2? You're either driving and you're on the phone because you're being safe, or you're texting. In both scenarios, they say, well, I'll just text you the info either way, which is a digital medium because you're going to the website to check it out. So I love that you're talking about that because I know you've done a lot with both. And I think it's vital to bridge that gap because there's people who only specialize in one or the other. And it's why I asked early on because, yeah, if you're doing TV ads, guess who hates keywords? And if you're doing keywords, guess who hates TV ads? And I never really saw it that way. I personally always saw it as if you have the budget, do both. However, to take out a Super Bowl commercial the week you launch, probably not the smartest thing, even if you can afford it.
Yeah, well, we're definitely aligned. And that's really the central thesis of the book that I've written, which is called Digital Stone Age, which is really that we are living in a digital age, but, these tactics and these ideas and concepts that modern marketers consider to be Stone Age, quote unquote, are actually just as effective, actually, in some cases, more effective now with the rise of digital, because there's more you can do about it when you're exposed to something that you see in a kind of traditional environment. And so understanding that duality is really important. But even if you're just thinking about things from a purely digital standpoint for budget or for any other reason, or you're just an exclusively digitally based business, there's actually another element within that, which is, what am I communicating to people when I'm reaching them? Am I constantly asking them for their information if it's a lead-based business? Am I constantly asking them to shop now or buy now if I'm selling something online? Am I constantly asking them to do something right away? Or am I blending messages of motion right now with messages around who my brand is, what we stand for, why we exist, what we believe, things that we call brand equity? And that's the other area that needs to be balanced, is even if you've got an exclusively digital marketing mix, you need to be consistently reaching people with messages that share who your brand is and what it stands for. And you need to be reaching them with messages around buy now, do this action, do whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do. And the folks that kind of overemphasize, and they almost always overemphasize on the act now message, they're missing an opportunity to not only drive some sales or drive conversions right now, but they're missing the opportunity to do that in the future, a week, a month, a year from now, by building brand equity. So one of the things that we like to say is all media is performance media, because even if you're not asking somebody to do something immediately, you're still finding out that you can drive a sale through a brand equity message. And it doesn't have to be Nike with Colin Kaepernick and, something that's, divisive and powerful and meaningful and cost, a couple $1 million to put together. It just needs to be something that shares who you are, what you stand for, so that then when they see the message that says shop now or buy now, they already know you and they maybe even trust you a little bit, and they understand you and they want to do more research, or they want to buy you or fill out that lead generation form that you've asked them to fill out. And that's what's also really important for marketers to get. And that also is universal. How you're communicating to people is just as important, if not more important, than where you're communicating to people.
That's another great expert authority insight, because like you're saying, a lot of stuff you can do the immediacy, the sense of urgency, buy today, this weekend only, all that stuff. And that's great for a short-term burst. But if that's all you're doing constantly, the year goes by, you got 52 weeks of 1 week sales versus even going slowly, you're building up that brand. And maybe they don't buy today. That's great. I'll be here in 6 months. I'll be here in 12 months. Watch this. Because I think at some point people get sick of this week only until next week, when it's the same ad with one word change. You know what I mean? It's like, people aren't stupid. And if you're selling to people who are, maybe that's saying something too.
We have this, we would joke. So our office is located on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So, we have beautiful views of the Hollywood Hills and everything LA is known for, but we also have the whole kind of overdone tourist scene as well. And every week when we first started, we would all go across the street to the everything is $10 store, where the 10 was crossed out and it said $5 every week, because it was constantly reaching tourists who were looking over there, and oh, everything's on sale, everything's half price. But we knew that everything was $5 all year long, and it didn't matter. And it was like such a great way of pointing out exactly the point that you just made.
Oh, that's hilarious. I used to work at Best Buy, and I'll never forget the Black Friday season. Everything, the DVDs were $11.99, $12.99 all year, and people were tearing apart the bins. You go in to buy 2 or 3, they're leaving with 15 because they were $9.99. So you go in to spend $30, you walk out $300 later for what? Because you screwed them over, huh? You saved your money. It's a whole other thing. That's hilarious. I kind of want to go there and check that out now. I didn't know that, but I've been there. How did you get into this? Clearly you're successful with it, but what's the backstory on it?
I got very lucky that I went to a great university. I went to Villanova. And, we don't just do basketball. It's in school. It's known for accounting, finance, and marketing, which is what I studied. And while I was in school, I spent some time in Australia and needed to kind of fill my days, and ended up getting a role consulting for Fox, for 20th Century Fox at the movie studio in Sydney, and got exposed to all the facets of marketing, and knew that, this was the career that I wanted. And the first role that I got offered outside of college was to come to Los Angeles and work in media and advertising. And it's been 18 great years ever since. But I think a lot of it is because, what really appealed to me is how do you combine very rational, logical, spreadsheet-oriented thinking with creative thinking, and bringing brands to life in the world, and going beyond the numbers, and being able to do both of those things on a daily basis has been really fulfilling.
I that's inspiring, and I can relate to it, because especially with EA interviews, there's a creative aspect of it for sure, and I designed it that way. However, we got multiple spreadsheets to keep track of everything, because this isn't just like happenstance to pull off what I'm doing. So I think it's great, because we've been talking about both sides, that duality you've been talking about. And I think so many people focus on one or the other, and the synergy you create when you combine them is pretty limitless, isn't it?
Yeah, I like to say that it's, people like to think of many situations in life as black or white. And I like to look at situations as black and white. And, doing that and having that mindset shift, changes your perspective on a lot of things. It goes way beyond just the work that we do.
Well, I appreciate you for sharing what you have. I got a couple more questions before we thank our sponsor. And one of them is, what's been the biggest transformation you've been able to give to a client so far?
Yeah, we've actually we've done a lot of we've done traditional marketing for years, and now we're going to get into digital. But actually, for one of our largest clients, we transitioned them from being all digital to proving to them that they needed to utilize television and outdoor to reach more people and to grow their business beyond the $500 million business that it is, or that it was. And they're now at a point where that business is $750 million. And we know that their expansion into TV and into buying and planning TV in a very digital, modern way, not just trying to go by all the old rule book, but doing everything more efficiently, has really, I think, helped them radically transform their business, and complemented the phenomenal work that their sales team has done in getting the brand into more locations. And, we couldn't be more proud of that transformation and that growth.
Nick and Steve, cut this, please. Well, that's inspiring to hear, just, helping them increase $250 million. That's not too bad. I want to ask you about Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So after increasing a company like that, do you search them out or do they find you?
A lot of it comes from them learning about us and from people that they trust within the industry, and then having that conversation of, okay, we've seen what you've done here. How could you apply that to our business? And, getting specific. And that's been really powerful for us. I think the other thing that we've done to help people find us is to share some of what we've learned. It's not just, digital Stone Age. It's, making sure that we've got white papers out in the industry and that we've got our name out in the industry so that people can experience some of what we have to offer from a strategic standpoint, and then ask us again, how can you apply this to my business and be specific to my business?
Okay. Is there a point where, like in a revenue amount, is there a point where you would say be at this level or above before even considering radio or TV?
Not necessarily, in the sense that there are a lot of brands that aren't generating much sales, certainly aren't generating a profit, but have really strong financial backing. And, brands like Bai, so the BAI, the drink. Yeah, they just went for it and went straight into mass advertising on television with Justin Timberlake and outdoor and radio and you name it. And were able to generate growth and achieve their business goals of acquisition that way. If you're a brand that's looking for a sustainable approach to advertising, we tend to be digitally focused up until, probably like the $200 million range. But you can now be active in these channels, and that's for national brands, by the way. For local brands, you can be much smaller than that. We tend to activate those channels, though, now for brands at an earlier level because there are more efficient and effective ways of buying traditional media that don't necessarily require big 7-8 figure price tags. And that's what's really exciting for us, is that everything is being democratized in terms of how we buy, which means that everything is being democratized in terms of what we can offer to brands confidently that we couldn't do, just 5 years ago.
So you're saying all the way to 200 mil for digital, if it's a national brand, and would you say maybe 20 to 50 if it's local or regional?
Yeah, I think, if you're in a larger market like a New York or Los Angeles, all the way down through the top 10, you probably would want to be, comfortably inside that 8-figure in annual sales range before you started jumping into those touch points. But for smaller markets and smaller geographies with less folks, you can go pretty far down. You can go down into the 7 figures in sales and still have TV be a relevant and appropriate choice for your brand. One of the things that we see all the time is for folks who are still subscribed to cable is, there's still a strong and healthy kind of local business ad block that runs every hour. And, those are businesses that are in the 7 figures and, are looking to grow and to grow their revenue and to grow their scale within this particular geography. And for them, TV is appropriate, and they found the right way to buy it and scale it.
Yeah, because to your point, if someone is still, if they haven't cut the cord yet, they're loyal. They're probably going to buy something because they're sticking around.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have to act on both the fact that people are cutting the cord, and we have to act on the fact that there's still plenty of people who have not yet cut the cord or may never. And, those are going to be two different cohorts that you reach in different ways with different mindsets and approaches to buying. And they're going to respond differently to your business or brand depending upon what you offer. And understanding them is a really core part of what we have to do now.
I think most wouldn't think about it, but that's a very niche, special advantage that you can take. I love that you're talking about all the nuances of all this because it really does depend. There's no one size fits all for any of this. So thank you for sharing specifically. I got one more question before we thank our sponsor, and it involves the wheel of whatever. So you get to pick yellow or black. Ooh, that's a decent one. That's a decent one.
I like yellow.
Yellow? All right. This one. See how that works? So your question is, you do all this stuff online. What do you like to do offline?
I'm an avid soccer fan and soccer player. So go to soccer matches whenever I can, whenever they're being held. So go Galaxy. And I play as well here in Los Angeles. And yeah, I would say that if you ask my wife, that probably fills up most of my free time right now.
Excellent. Well, appreciate you for sharing that and all the information. We're going to thank our sponsor and come back for the imperfect action round. You've heard me say every business needs a book, including yours. And it's true. And that's why you should visit freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. But you know what? Don't take my word for it. Take it from a few of my authors, like Lori.
And I went from having an idea and a possibility to actually getting my book published.
Or Catherine.
Thank you for making my mom #1 best-selling author.
Or Mary Alice.
What he got done for me in 3 days regarding my book launch, unmanageable.
John Cody.
I've worked with Mario over the phone and online, and he's been very helpful in getting me where I needed to go with promoting my books.
Rocio.
There's no way in the world I would have been able to do this with somebody else. I've attempted it in the past. It didn't serve me. As a matter of fact, I ended up more frustrated than anything. So this has been a very seamless process.
Adele.
If you're looking for an amazing business coach, I highly recommend Mario Ficini.
Or Bill Benner.
I can't make a higher recommendation than to work with Mario Ficini. He has been great for me, and right now I won't work with anybody else except for Mario.
Hey, their words, not mine. Visit freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com to get started now, and I look forward to hearing your transformation as the next video success story. Once again, that's freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com. And we are back with the imperfect action round. Bill, are you ready to take imperfect action?
Born ready.
All right. 3 questions for you, 60-second or less answers. The first one is, what is the fastest path to the profits?
Fastest path to the profits. Get your digital house in order. Understand
Excellent.
the why of your business. And of course, ensure that when you do have marketing, you've got something to say and somewhere to actually drive people to that's going to convert them.
Fantastic. I got all 3 right. I had them in my notes. I was like, please say it, please say it, please say it. All right, number 2. What is the biggest problem you see your prospects making and the fastest way for them to fix it?
Rigidity towards one mode of thinking. So we talked about that quite a bit. And whatever that mode of thinking is, there may be something that works best for your brand or business, but it's probably going to work better when it's combined with something else that may not feel like it's in the same family. And that's where we see the most success for marketers and for brands.
Excellent. Number 3, what is the best way to maximize customer lifetime value?
Oh, you have to be service-oriented organization. You know, we say all the time that we are a media agency at Exveris Media, but the reality, that's what we only say to the outside world. Internally, we say that we are a customer service company who happens to be extraordinarily good at media and advertising.
I like that. What books would you recommend for Expert Authority World?
Aside from Digital Stone Age, my favorite book, I think there's a couple of books out there for business leaders. Ego is the Enemy is one that I've recently read, and it was just a fantastic approach on the psychology of leadership. And, I would say that, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell is one that was particularly influential for me.
Excellent. Thank you for those. And where would you like people to learn more?
Well, you can visit our website for the agency, which is exverus.com, exverus.com. You can also look me up, Bill Durant, with 2 R's, on LinkedIn. And of course, you can find the book, Digital Stone Age, on Amazon and everywhere you are accustomed to shopping for fine literature.
Excellent. And I will make sure that makes it onto your featured show notes page. We'll have all the links for that. So thank you for everything you've shared. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
All right, Expert Authority World. We have another great one here today. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. God bless. You're already the expert, but have you transformed your expertise into a tangible asset that will generate and qualify leads while increasing profit for you 24/7? And if so, how well are you promoting it? With the Expert Authority Effect publishing method, it's easier and faster than ever. Visit freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Visit freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com to get started now. Once again, that's freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com. Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you got a lot out of it. I know I sure did. If you haven't done so already, I invite you to subscribe to the show. And also be sure to check out eainterviews.com for complete show notes, the full interview video experience, links to the resources we mentioned, and more. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you tomorrow.